Mont Group in Canada. And I am very happy today to welcome Mr. André Savoia Martins, the head of the Trade Promotion and Investments Office at the Consulate General of Brazil in Toronto. Today we're going to present an overview about doing business in Brazil. Mr. Savoia will present, we'll provide an overview of Brazil, the opportunities that Brazil has for businesses. I'm going to provide a little bit of an introduction, and then the presentation itself will be in English. The presentation is being recorded, so following the webinar, everybody will receive a copy of the recording as well as the presentation. I also have today with us Jonathan Bass, who is an attorney at law, and he is in our Mont Group Brazil office. He will be on this webinar. We will have questions and answers at the end of the webinar. So I would kindly ask everyone to please you can write your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A section, but we will answer them at the end of the presentations in order not to interrupt the flow of the presentations. So without further ado, I'd like to present again Mr. André Savoia Martins. Thank you so much for being here today. So Mr. Savoia entered into the Brazilian Foreign Service in 2006, worked in the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, and Food Supply from 2015 to 2017. He has served abroad in many capacities, and for example, in the embassy in China, the Consulate General of Brazil in Shanghai, the Embassy of Brazil to Iraq, and now the Consulate General of Brazil in Toronto, where he is the head of the Trade Promotion and Investments Office, as well as Vice Consul. And this week, I understand that he is acting Consul General, super busy. We so appreciate your time. The whole office, we truly appreciate your time. So without further ado, we'll let you, we understand you have a very busy schedule, so you'll make your presentation and won't be able to stay for the Q&A, but I will let you take it away, and I will allow you to screen share right now. I'll stop screen sharing.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Laura. It's a pleasure for me to be here. To me, it's always a huge pleasure to speak about Brazil and about the bilateral relations between Brazil and Canada. I'm here together with my two advisors, Angela and Stefania, who always help me with this work. Stefania is working with the presentation. Are you able to share that?
I'll try. Let's see. It was working.
We prepared something very simple just to show an overview about Brazil itself and about the bilateral relations between Brazil and Canada. Is it ready?
Hang on. Hang on a second.
It's loading here. So I have just arrived. I'm still studying a lot about the bilateral relations, which is very interesting. As you mentioned before, Laura, I started my career working in China because as I entered the diplomatic career, I knew that China was the place for diplomat who was interested in specializing in trade investment to be. In 2009, China was becoming the biggest Brazilian trade partner. And I had the privilege of being the head of the trade office of the Embassy of Brazil in Beijing. And then as 3 years in China was not enough, of course, I was posted to Shanghai to be the commercial consul there, which was an incredible experience. Of course, I had the opportunity of working a lot with Brazilian agribusiness. Then back to Brasilia, I went to the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock to be the head of the Department for the International Promotion of Brazilian Agribusiness. Well, I'm just saying some words because Stefan is trying to to upload our presentation. It's loading. It's not that.
Can you see everything, Laura?
You know, it just says that it's loading. It's amazing. We live in a city that has so much technology, you know, in downtown Toronto. And it's kind of ironic that the technology doesn't work when you need it to.
Well, we can continue here. Talking a little bit about part of the presentation not be loaded. I think we can start talking a little bit about what's going on. You know that 2 weeks ago we participated in PDAC, the huge conference on the mineral sector, which was really very interesting. We had a delegation here, a Brazilian delegation, with 56 Brazilian businessmen in the mineral field, and also Brazilian authorities, which was very, very interesting. Well, we have 21 slides, but I don't know why it's
just saying loading. So weird. Yesterday I went through all the slides with Laura, and now it's just
Stefania, if you wanted to send me the presentation, I could project and then maybe advance. But you know, if you can maybe, you know, continue.
Well, yeah, I think this is what we can do. I can continue here. I'll have the printed presentation here with me while it loads. And of course, Stefania will make it available for everybody, for you and for everybody who is interested in me. You don't need to take notes about this. It's just some points that we highlighted here to talk about Brazil and Canada. As you all know, Brazil is a country of continental dimensions. You know, it's just like a continent. It's a huge country. It's the third largest in the world in discontinued lands, because if it's in continued land, we are the fourth. We are bigger than the US. And we have a huge population of 200 million people living in Brazil, which is, of course, because of this amount of people that we have in the country, we have a huge domestic market, which is something very attractive for companies all over the world, and of course for Brazilian companies too. And when we work with trade promotion abroad, this is a challenge for us, because sometimes the Brazilian domestic market is so heated that we have to work hard to provide for our own consumers there. And we have the 12th largest GDP in the world of $1.6 trillion US. Brazil today, we were requested to give an overview about our country. So we have 26 states, 26 provinces in Brazil, plus the federal district, divided in 5 regions. So we have over almost 6,000 municipalities in the country, out of which 17 have over 1 million inhabitants. So most of them on the coast, because of the process of the occupation of our territory. Our biggest cities are along the coast. The main cities are Brasilia, São Paulo, Rio, Salvador, Belo Horizonte, and we have mostly the capitals in Brazil. They are cities with over 1 million people living there. There is something interesting that we highlighted here. It is about the relations between Brazil and Canada. Actually, our commercial relations, the commercial relations between Brazil and Canada started 75 years before our diplomatic relations. So our first trade office, or actually the first trade office of Canada in Brazil, and our first trade office in Canada was opened in 1866. And our embassies were opened only in 1941. So you see the importance of our trade between these two countries, Brazil and Canada, two countries of both of our continental dimensions. We have the Embassy of Brazil here in Ottawa, and we also have this consulate in Toronto. a consulate in Montreal, and another one in Vancouver. Canada has the embassy in Brasilia and also a consulate general in São Paulo and another one in Rio. And they also have trade offices in Belo Horizonte, Recife, and Porto Alegre, covering respectively the southeast of Brazil, the northeast, and the south, the most important economic regions of the country. And there's just a note that I would like to make here. Brazil, well, we are part of the Ministry of Foreign Relations of Brazil, and trade promotion is under our mandate. So today, the Ministry of Foreign Relations in Brazil has a network of over 200 trade offices all over the world. So we have one here in Toronto that covers Ontario, Manitoba, and Nunavut. We have our trade office in Montreal, another one in Vancouver, and 200 more all over the world, which of course makes us work together with the Brazilian Ministry of Agriculture, the Brazilian Ministry of Industry and Trade, the Brazilian Ministry of Mines. So they all work together with us to promote not only Brazilian products abroad, but also services, tourism, and finance, and etc. Well, the current of trade between Brazil and Canada has reached in 2022 $10 billion US. We sell $7 billion US to Canada, and we buy around $3 billion US. So we have a surplus of $4 billion US. The main products that Canada imports from Brazil, first one is gold, then aluminum oxide and hydroxides, sugar, coffee, products of iron or steel, and airplanes. And Brazil mostly imports fertilizers from Canada, turbojets, airplanes, coal, and medicaments. Investment is also an important aspect of the bilateral relations between Brazil and Canada. Canada's foreign direct investment in Brazil in 2021 was of 17.7 billion US dollars, and Brazil's foreign direct investment in Canada was 9.7 billion US dollars. Well, Canada is the third, Brazil is Canada's 13th largest destination, and Canada is the second largest investor in Brazil in the Western Hemisphere. It's important to note that 10 billion US dollars of all this investment, the total investment that Canada makes in Brazil is 17.7 billion, out of which 10 billion is in the mineral sector. So you can see how important it was the PDAC conference that we had 2 weeks ago. And of course, we have Brazilian companies like Vale, Gerdau, and others in this sector that are investing in Canada too. For the bilateral trade, the main sectors are agriculture, mining, science, technology, and innovation, clean energy, aerospace, education, defense, oil, and gas. And then we have here a slide in which we have some information about science, technology. There's some agreements that we celebrated with Canada, which are important. And we are now negotiating a preferential agreement between Brazil and Canada. When I was in Brazil, I was in a department that was taking care of that. There's, of course, still a long way to go, but there is a trade agreement under negotiation in order to have preferential tariffs for certain basket of products. This is evolving, but it's still in the negotiating process. There's a very important segment in Brazil that deserves its own slide. It's actually, Stephanie prepared 2 slides about Brazilian agribusiness. Know that agribusiness is one of the major segments in Brazil, not only for our economy and for our exports too. Just for you all to have an idea, in 2000, Brazil was exporting $20 billion US in products that came from the agribusiness. In 2021, those exports amounted more than 100 billion. And Brazil today is the third largest global exporter of food, feeding more than 1 billion people in 200 countries. So, no, sometimes people see Brazil as a huge farm, and it is a huge farm, but we are more than that. Brazil is able to supply food to countries all over the world at very competitive prices and very high quality products. And of course, as a trade commission, it's very convenient to promote products that have good prices and high quality. Is it okay now, the presentation?
Let's see, I'll try again when we get to the page where you want.
It's page 10. And you know that in 2015, estimates show that the world will need 50% more food than it needs today. And Brazil is expected to meet 60% of this growth. The main products of Brazilian exports from agribusiness worldwide are beef, chicken, pork, soybean, coffee, orange juice, sugar, fresh fruits, corn, rice, organic products, seafood, confectionaries, wine, spirits, and honey. Besides, so as I said, Brazil is much more than agribusiness. We have very sustainable energy production, which attracts the interest of countries like Canada. So most countries have 84% of primary energy generated by fossil sources. Brazil has 43% of its energy generated by renewable sources. Just in terms of comparison, in Brazil, electric power, 56.3% of our electric power is generated by electricity. By hydroelectrics. 56.3% is generated by hydroelectrics. 12% by wind power stations, 11.5% solar, 8.2% natural gas, and 7.8% biomass. It's important to notice that in Brazil, all cars in Brazil today, they are what we call flex fuel. You can fill the car with either gasoline or ethanol. This project of ethanol in Brazil with alcohol, ethanol that comes from sugar cane, started in 1973 because we had the oil crisis in the world, the two oil crisis in the 1970s. And then Brazil started this program, which is a huge success, and it's a reality in the country. Of course, Brazil also exports the technology for ethanol production worldwide, which makes our energy production being even more sustainable. In terms of oil and gas, Brazil is the 10th largest global oil producer. It's 3% of the global production. In the years 2000, Brazil discovered the pre-salt reserves in Brazil, which make us become self-sufficient. But of course, as we were not self-sufficient before, our refineries were, the old ones were built to refine oil that was coming from the Middle East, for example. And our oil today, of course, the refineries are being updated so that we can refine our own oil. While we don't have this totally ready, we export oil to other markets and import oil from other countries, which is quite interesting. You see, Brazil, because our oil is much thicker than the oil that comes from the Middle East, for example. And then we are now adapting our refineries in Brazil so that we are able to refine this thicker oil that we have. While it's not fully ready, we are exporting to China, for example, our thick oil, and we import from Iraq, for example, the oil that we need for our refineries. Brazil today is the 9th largest oil consumer. It corresponds to 12% of Brazil's GDP and 21% of our foreign direct investment, which was of $10 billion in 2019. Our national production of oil is 3 million barrels of oil per day. 94% is offshore from the pre-salt region. By 2023, Brazil will be producing 5.5 million barrels of oil per day and 129 million cubic meters per day of natural gas. But well, sometimes when speak about Brazil, people think about food, people think about mineral resources, think about oil and gas, but Brazil is more than that. We have the 7th largest healthcare market in the world, which attracts the attention of lots of exporters of products and services. And of course, we have a very robust industry in this sector too. Brazil is the largest healthcare market in Latin America. 9.1% of our GDP is spent on healthcare, which has been a very important segment for startup programs too. In this sector, we highlighted this healthcare sector because it's a very attractive sector for Canada. Now, actually, our role here is to promote Brazil. Now, we have our colleagues, our counterparts in Brazil who promote Canada, but we are aware of the mutual interests, and this is part of our job to be promoting our mutual interests. So this healthcare sector is a very attractive sector for Canada in Brazil today. Another one that we highlighted here is games, because Canada is very strong in the creative industry, and Brazil has the largest games market in Latin America. It's the 12th biggest worldwide by revenues. In 2021, the revenues for the games market was $2.3 billion US. And of course, this is a sector that's growing very rapidly in Brazil, which is attracting a lot of interest of Canada. In terms of education, Canada is the #1 international destination for Brazilian students. For you to have an idea, here in our jurisdiction, well, actually in Canada, as I said, I'm new here and I'm still studying about that, but we have 120,000 Brazilians living in Canada today. 90,000 are in Ontario. So you see that we are mostly concentrated in this province. But in terms of numbers for students, in 2019, we had 25,000 students that came to Canada to study for short-term periods, out of a total of 40,000 Brazilians who came to study in Canada. And Canada is interested in attracting even more Brazilian students to come here. Last week, I gave an interview about that because Canada is promoting this attraction to Brazilian students so that they can follow the diploma, the academic path here. You know, they can study English, they can study at university, graduate, and then specialize, then become permanent residents. So I think that I don't have the numbers now, but Brazilians today, I think, are the 5th or in terms of immigrants in Canada, we are the 5th or the 5th biggest group. And most of those Brazilian immigrants to Canada, they are highly qualified. You know, it's a very high quality immigration of Brazilians that we have here in Canada, which is very important for our bilateral relations too, because we have Brazilians in high positions in that can participate in the decisory process of many companies here. So this is a sector that attracts our interest a lot too, because it's growing rapidly. In 2021, 11,000 Brazilian students came to Canada with study permits. As I said, this is Canada is very interested in this too. You know, Canada is now working with the promotion of to attract Brazilian students to the country. Lastly, we are about to finish here. Stefania brought to my attention some important information that deserves to be highlighted here about the bilateral trade in the last couple of years. You know that we have the war in Ukraine that changed lots of things in the world, and Brazil depends on the imports of potash. So in the last couple of years, we had a change in our trade, bilateral trade, in which the chemical industry, potash, beef and pork, and aircrafts became very important items of our bilateral trade. Brazil is importing from Canada $3.7 billion of potash, which was an increase of 151%, 72% of our imports in the last couple of years, because we were first importing potash from Ukraine and from the region, and now because of the war, we had to find other suppliers. So this was very positive for Canada, because now we are buying a lot of potash from Canada for our fertilizers. In March 2022, 1 year ago, we had the opening of Canada's beef and pork market to Brazil, and then we celebrated the first disembarkment of a cargo bringing Brazilian beef and pork to the Canadian market. We know that Canada is also a big producer of products from agribusiness. You know, so we are in certain sectors, we are competitors, but Brazil is succeeding in opening the market for products that are important for our exports. And just as a reference, in 2022, last year, Canada imported almost 3,000 tons of beef and 500 tons of pork from Brazil. Recently, Porter Airlines, the Canadian company, announced the purchase of 50 jets from Embraer. This also reflects very positively in our surplus, in our current of trade. It was a business of 7.3 billion US dollars. And the next few years, Porter will be receiving the aircrafts bought from Brazil. Well, the last slide, we have contact information from our consulate here. We have our trade office, and we are here to assist any company, any firm, any individual who is interested in doing business with Brazil. As I said at the beginning, our role is mostly to promote Brazilian products here in Canada, in our jurisdiction, and to support investment programs and also promote tourism and anything that is required to make the bilateral relation between Brazil and Canada even more efficient and productive. We are here to help. Thank you very much for the attention.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I didn't say at the onset, thank you, Stefania, for preparing this presentation. And I know, as we mentioned, we will be sending out the presentations after the webinar. And so thank you for the preparation of that great presentation, the great overview. And I actually enjoyed it better because I wasn't distracted by what was on the screen. I was, listening to what you had to say and couldn't agree more with the opportunities and perhaps the potential synergy between Canada and Brazil. Yes, we compete in many areas, but there could be opportunity for partnerships and collaboration between, it's not just Canada and Brazil, but any country and Brazil. And so I appreciate your discussion today in the format of delivery. And I think that was fantastic. Again, everybody will receive, no need to take notes. If you didn't take notes, you'll be receiving a copy with contact information for Andre Savoya and the office So if anybody wishes to get in touch with the office here in Toronto, you'll have that information. So thank you everyone in the office. I know it was a team effort, and I know you have a busy week this week, so feel free to jump off. I'm going to start with a little bit more technical, business oriented about how to open up a business in Brazil, tax implications, etc. So thank you again so much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful day. Okay, so I am going to jump right into the presentation here. As I mentioned, Laura Riguro, I'm with Mont Group in Canada. We're going to go over today, we will go over general information. I think was handled very well by the Consulate General of Brazil in Toronto in the Trade Office. So I'll skip over that. I'll just go over it briefly. We'll talk about the benefits of doing business in Brazil, how to set up a company, some visa labor considerations, as well as fiscal and taxation considerations, and we'll just touch a little bit on public procurement. Again, no need to take notes. You'll receive a copy of this presentation. So we've gone over the population, but the capital of Brazil is Brasilia. It's the Brazil is the sixth most populated country in the world, and you can see by the states, like the state of Sao Paulo, Minas Gerais, Rio de Janeiro. That's the population, from 46.5 million in Sao Paulo. And then it's the 9th largest economy in the world. Sao Paulo itself is the 4th largest economy of the Americas, and it has the 7th largest consumer market in the world. So those are some pretty big numbers. Here's a map which shows Brazil's regions and states. And you can see the breakdown on the right-hand side of the screen. I'll just leave it here for you to see. Oops. Moving along. Okay, so the benefits of doing business in Brazil. Brazilian consumers do prefer to buy local products and services instead of importing from foreign companies. As an established business in Brazil, and in some cases, it is possible to reduce the tax burden from 39% to 20%. As an established business in Brazil, and with careful tax planning, it is possible to recover more than 50% of taxes levied on imports. If you'd like to do business in Brazil, there are 3 main options. One is finding an importer or a foreign client for the sale of your products through, for example, an importer, distributor, etc. Second option is through commercial representation. You make a contract with a commercial representative in Brazil who will represent the foreign company in Brazil. Third option is to establish a Brazilian company through legal representation. So that will be our focus for today, is establishing a Brazilian company I know that the overview of Brazil talked a lot about bilateral trade and, Brazil's main exports and imports from Canada, for example, in general imports. But this part of my presentation will focus more on establishing a company in Brazil, legal implications, as I mentioned, tax implications, tax savings in many cases, etc. So when we're talking about finding, the different options, we're just comparing the costs of doing business with Brazil. So finding an importer, takes time. Any kind of business takes time, but sometimes finding that right buyer, that right partner for you, that right importer, distributor, etc., can take time. Costs tend to be lower because you're finding a buyer. You're not actually setting up business in the country. but you're losing some of the, you're losing control of the product, you're losing some of that, that buying power with respect to the international market, and you're losing the ability to add value to your product or service. Commercial representation may be a good introduction to the market, and you know, a layout of market entry. How really does it work? What does the framework look like? But sometimes the commissions that are required can be quite high. And the risks involved can also be high. The third option that we're looking at is establishing a business in Brazil. Medium high costs. Despite the fixed costs, there are numerous taxation benefits, greater value add to the product or service, more credibility with consumers, because as we mentioned, Brazilians prefer to buy local. So there perhaps may be more credibility if you establish a business in Brazil. For legal representatives, the main requirements is that Brazil allows any Brazilian company, except for some conducting specific activities, to be wholly owned by a foreign partner. However, it is necessary for each foreign partner to grant a power of attorney to a legal representative in Brazil. The legal representative must be a natural person, a Brazilian or foreign, resident in Brazil, and if the person is foreign, must have a permanent visa. So we have here that opening up a company in Brazil takes approximately 30 days. There's one little caveat there that I'll mention in a second. So end to end, you have your preliminary phase where, you know, you contract representatives, accountants, your third-party providers. You get a legal address, define your line of business. Mont Group recommends a limited liability company. That's preliminary phase. Preparation of your documentation, the drafting of your documents, including powers of attorney, incorporation, etc., the bylaws of the new company. Register the company with the relevant authorities, both at the federal, state, municipal level, as well as boards of trade with required. Open up your bank account, and this is where that caveat comes in. It can take up to 70 days to open up a bank account. But in general, opening up a company takes approximately a month. However, that part of opening a bank account can take up to 70 days. And then you're ready with your active company. You're ready to begin conducting business in your chosen jurisdiction. Trademark registration. So all trademarks must be registered with the National Institute of Industrial Property to guarantee the right to use throughout the national territory. Individuals and legal entities may apply for registration, which includes, in addition to the name and logo, the right to use a product format and/or service. The definitive registration of the trademark can take from 12 to 36 months and be issued and has a duration of 10 years. When we talk about visas, so we have a visitor's visa, which is intended for a short stay up to 90 days. The temporary visa or temporary residence visa is intended for a longer term stay. Depending on the type of temporary visa, the immigrant is usually authorized to reside in Brazil for a period of 1 to 2 years. And then we have the investor's visa for a foreigner who proves capital investment in the country. This investment can be made in a company or in real estate. Thus, with the realization of the investment, the foreigner may also receive a residence permit in Brazil. There are diplomatic visas, as the name implies, are granted to foreign officials and civil servants traveling to Brazil on official mission. represented in a foreign state. We have official visas, which are granted to foreign administrative authorities. And then courtesy visas granted to celebrities, artists, athletes, foreign authorities on unofficial travel to Brazil, family members and private employees of foreign authorities. So moving, I know I'm going through this quickly, but partnering, what is the best option? So whether you go with a service provider and sign a contract for the provision of services, invoice the company, that is one option to work with to contract these service providers. Another option is to register an employee. Company signs an employment contract, registers the employee, and pays all labor rights. So with respect to contracting an employee, the employee must be registered and must receive their employment benefits up to 44 hours per week, 13th and the 13th salary, guaranteed fund, Social Security, 30 days of vacation, overtime pay, and severance pay in case of dismissal without cause. Even without registration, the labor relationship may be recognized and labor rights must be paid. So I have a warning here, substance over form. When we talk about taxes in Brazil, there are 92, currently there are 92 taxes in force, which includes taxes, contributions, and fees. In addition to the sales tax rate and personal income tax rate, taxes in Brazil are divided into federal, state, and municipal taxes. I'm not going to read every tax, but you can see on this slide, here's a listing of the federal taxes, such as, income tax and benefits, the IR, social contributions, tax on industrialized products, import tax, export tax, etc. Tax on securities exchange, state taxes on the sale, circulation of merchandise. You have tax on ownership of motor vehicles and tax on the donation of goods and rights. Those are state taxes. And then when we talk about municipal taxes, we're looking at tax on rendering of services other than ICMS services, ISS. That's tax on the movement of goods. You've got tax on urban real estate and territorial property, and tax on transfer between living people in any title of real estate. When we talk specifically about income tax, we're looking at the corporate income tax, the IRPJ, taxpayers and legal entities domiciled in Brazil. This tax has two regimes, the real income and presumed income, and both have basic rates of 15%. I'll show you some examples in a few more slides. So that's the corporate income tax. Then we have the individual income tax, the IRPF. All individuals residing in Brazil or abroad who receive income from sources in Brazil are considered taxpayers. The rate is defined according to income. So here we have corporate income tax, the IRPJ, and social contribution on net income, the CSLL. And we're talking about real income, presumed income. So the company must opt for the real or presumed income regime. Selection made at the beginning of the calendar year. Selection is made at the beginning of the calendar year and can only be modified the following calendar year. And this tax is paid on a quarterly basis. In terms of real income under this regime, the IRPJ and CSLL are calculated based on a value obtained in the statement of income for the year called DRE, with a variation of additions and deductions allowed by law. So the IRPJ tax rate is 15% and plus 10% in excess of 20,000. And I've just drawn a blank. Not the currency, 20,000. Jonathan, if you're, or Stefania, I just, sorry, I didn't catch that.
20,000 reais.
Thank you, thank you. And the CSLL tax rate of 9%. If there's a quarterly loss, there will be no payment of both IRPJ and CSLL. This is a breakdown of the social contributions, PIS, COFINS, real income. So I'm not going to read this. You will have the slide deck, but you can see the difference between the calculations for real income and based on real income and presumed income. So one of the big differences here at the bottom is the regime for real income allows the taking of credits in the acquisition of inputs, and under presumed income, the regime does not allow the taking of credits in the acquisition of supplies. So there are some main differences between the two, as you can see outlined in this slide. So tax on the movement of goods and services, ICMS, another acronym. There's state tax, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais, etc. In Brazil, each state has its own ICMS regulations, so its own tax regulations. So for the purposes of this webinar today, we'll only use information from Sao Paulo. Law number, here's the legislation, law number 6.374, 1989. So a generating event, this tax has many generating events, the main one being the circulation of goods, including imports. So merchandise sales, trades. Taxpayers, the natural person or legal entity who regularly performs the delivery of goods or rendering of transportation services between states or between municipalities. Tax base is considered the gross income from the sale of merchandise minus returns and discounts. And then the ICMS rate is 18%. That's the basic rate of the state of Sao Paulo. And the period is monthly on a credit basis on acquisitions and debits on sales and sales of goods. So when we talk about presumed income, the calculation of both IRPJ and CSLL under the presumptive income regime is made directly on the company's gross income, from which the presumptive profit margin is extracted. It's necessary to segregate the information from each operation since each one has its own presumption rate. For industry and commerce, it's 8%, for services, 32%. The IRPJ tax rate is 15% to plus 10% in excess of 20,000 reales. And of the taxable base, and CSLL rate is 9%. For presumed income, I pointed this out earlier, there will be an IRPJ and CSLL payment even in the event of a quarterly loss. So taxes on services, quickly go over this: municipal tax, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Belo Horizonte, etc. Each municipality has its own ISS regulations. We're using Sao Paulo as an example, so you can see the law number, the generating event, the taxpayer, tax base, the rate. For example, many rates, 5% consulting services, 2.9% software and computer services, and it is paid monthly. There are 3 examples that are used in the slide deck. I'm not, in the essence of time, I'm not going to go over them in any detail. They are there for you in the slide deck. If you have any questions, as I mentioned on the at the beginning, we have our specialist, Jonathan Bass, who will be here for the question and answer period. So if you have specific questions for Jonathan, please, I welcome you to drop them in the chat, and he can answer any questions you may have. So here was the first example for information and technology services. Total taxes to be paid under both the real income regime and presumed income regime. So you can see the differences that are there. This is the example of the information for information and technology services. Here's the second example for business consulting. So you can see the different tax rates, the different amounts under both regimes: real income, presumed income. And then the third example looks at the tax burden for general merchandise and trading companies. And then on this next slide, you can see the tax burden using an example. And again, comparing the real income regime with the presumed income regime. So you can see the differences. They're there for you to review after they will be in your inbox for you to review after the webinar. Okay, there are many agreements. Brazil has many agreements to avoid double taxation. So there's an agreement with Canada, an agreement with Chile, Ecuador, the many countries, the countries that are listed by the flags on this slide. As well, Brazil has free trade agreements with Mercosur, Chile, Mercosur, Israel, Mercosur, Egypt, Mercosur, European Union, and ALADI. Public procurement, just to touch on this slide. So foreign companies participating in Brazil, there's a new bidding law 14.133 2021. It brought a more flexible bidding format, even for participation of foreign companies, so that the administration can build a public notice according to its needs, coupling different models depending on its objective through judgment criteria, different modalities, etc. So that was a new law that came, a new procurement bidding law that came out in 2021. In order to participate in the bidding process, different documentation is required, but the documentation that's required, varies according to the area in which the bid is active. However, the purpose of the documentation is to basically prove, legal qualification, fiscal regularity, technical qualification, economic financial qualification, and then must include, in many cases, specific complementary documents. So here's the process from the publication of the notices to the drafting of your proposals, opening session and authorization, ranking and evaluation of proposals, and then hopefully approval and contracting. So that is the end of my presentation. Here are Mont Group's offices throughout South America and North America. So our offices in Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Canada. As I mentioned, I'm in the Canadian office. We're located in the financial core of Toronto, First Canadian Place. Offices, headquarters as well in Chile. We also have an office in Antofagasta, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, Uruguay, and USA. And we have here with us today Jonatas Vaz, our attorney at law, representing our Mont Brazil office. Here are his contacts. I'm going to leave this on the screen, and I'm going to welcome Jonatas again. And if anybody has any questions for Jonatas or for myself, I'm not seeing any questions. I don't know, Jonatas, I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe if you can say a few words. And
hello, Laura. Thank you, Stefania, for your support. Thank you for the consulate. We just you introduced me. Thank you so much. And I think we need just to wait if we need some questions.
right. And if nobody has any questions, you can always send an email to Jonatas, to Mont Group, you can answer the follow-up email that will be sent to you in the coming day or two. You can always just reply, and somebody from Mont will gladly answer your questions. And you know, once reviewing the material, I know that the presentation, there's a lot of information that I quickly skimmed over. Those examples, Jonatas, that you provided of the tax burden, fantastic. But sometimes I think it takes people, they need to work through that for their particular situation, whether they're providing a service or a good, and then the different implications, the tax burden that might pertain to them, also depending on the state that they wish to do business in. So I think we need to allow people time to go through
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I don't see any questions. So I will stop the webinar here. And thank everybody for their participation today. Again, thank you to the Consulate General of Brazil in Toronto, Stefania, and the whole team. Thank you very, very much for supporting us today. I thought the information was fantastic. And I look forward to continuing to work with everybody as they try to do business in Brazil. And yeah, have a great afternoon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.